and difficult to find your parking. But it's so strange when I come there. They also, like here, they have your particulars in a sense before you park. And when I said, like yesterday, the same thing happened here when I came to the gate. Hello, you Kubus. I say, yeah, I'm Kubus. You can go through. So I said, because I like the informality of everything. You know, it kind of works for me. Yeah, many of you have in some way had some of our programs or been exposed to the to our profiles and so on. See my friend Christo here too has been also assisting us in many ways. So I thought this morning I'll just journey with you a little bit and maybe sort of wrap up and in a sense summarize where we are in whole brain leadership, but also talk a little bit about creativity. So that all these things are combined. I have the opportunity often, and it's a privilege actually to be traveling throughout the world often and meeting people in different organizations and institutions. And so we do a lot of work in many parts of the world. I was just sharing with Anzu that we do a lot of work in India, for instance. Just came back from India a few weeks ago again, where we had a whole team there and we were training people in corporates but also in education. My role there was very much in kind of education. I was also there. I officially opened the first whole brain school in India, in Hyderabad. It's a big occasion, and 35 other schools are now following during this year. 35 other schools will be trained and so on to be able to train their students in a sort of whole brain way and methodologies and so on. When I started out like a million years ago on this pathway, this creativity whole brain pathway, I just never knew. I didn't have a clue where it would take me. I think creativity has got that fascination that you're involved in it, but you just don't know where it will take you. And so as far as the instruments that I've developed, and over the years, the past 2 years, I've actually developed a series of new whole brain instruments. And specifically one of them has had a massive impact in the organizations where we've been involved in. And I'll come to, when I show you the slide of the brain again, I'll talk about that. It's an instrument focusing on followership, not on leadership, but on followership. It's a shift a big shift. There's a past 4 or 5 years, a lot of research has been done on this concept of followership. And the point of departure is this: if you want a happy organization, you've got to have an incredible insight and empathy of the people who are following you. And often we don't. We often use the term happy organizations, and we involved in this. In India, for instance, the most popular topic that I get to talk about is how do you create a happy school, kind of thing. So, but you can do it from a scientific perspective. And that's what I've tried to do by developing this follow. I'll talk a little bit, because I think it's hugely important for a university like yourself. If you want to have incredible good relationships with people, you need to get an understanding of how do they want to be managed, do they want to be treated from that kind of perspective. And along the way, I'll also show you A.B. de Villiers' cricket brain. We've been working with him now for some time. I'll show you that. Okay. So let me start. Yeah, this is the brain of the students you have to work with. It's not so easy, not so lekker all the time, Looks very, very, very complicated kind of thing. Okay, but you've got to penetrate that, in a way. I got this. What are the characteristics of a great university? This is only a few of them. This is not all of them. But it's interesting if you go through them. They need, the first one, great teachers, great lecturers, great professors, students and support staff. The word great is got many meanings now. And I'll try, when I talk about the whole brain, your role as a whole brain leader, I'll try to also then to unpack that. But it's important. They have an internal culture that is always seeking the truth. They have an internal, all the great universities have an internal culture always seeking nothing but the truth. Not guessing about the truth, seeking the truth. High-level operational system. Educationists run the university, and in brackets it said, not politicians. Educationists run these universities. It's run by academics, educationists. There's independent thinking and there's free expression. Democratic management. And the mission should be to bring out the best in students. Always to bring out the best in students. If you look at that and you think of your own university. By the way, I was saying to you, I've been in many times, but I don't store the information, so I've got to get a map every time I come here. You know, some stuff I don't just store. Why would you store information if you just can get a map somewhere? But driving through the campus, it's a beautiful campus. It's green. It's lovely. It's a good place you've got here. It's lovely. You know, I studied at Cape Town Varsity, and I always thought that against the mountain, this beautiful building is beautiful, and that is also beautiful. But it's lovely. If you look at this, is any of those that sort of would you say you'd okay? You give yourself 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10 of those? Would you say any of those? Independent thinking, would you say? You encourage that probably in this university? Because I think one has to sort of measure yourself against always the best. You can't measure yourself with those mediocre or half-page. You've got to look at what is the best. And this I got from what they call the great universities, the best kind of universities. And there's a whole long list. This is only a few of them. And I thought it's kind of good to have a look at it and say to you, maybe in some of those areas we can improve, maybe even dramatically improve. Okay, let me move on. This is, first of all, the great leaders of the university, and to be able to create eventually a whole brain university must always, at any given moment, understand the essence, must understand the essence. And essence is a very powerful concept within creativity. Let me see what is the quote. In creative problem solving, I remember Sidney Pons. Some of you may have come across Sidney Pons who attended our conference. Sidney Pons was one of my mentors and a very heavyweight in creativity. He was the person who in the mid-1950s, one of the two people who invented creative problem solving, and they invented the word brainstorming. So really heavyweights in creativity. Now Sidney Pons always said, and I traveled with him all over, and for 17 years we actually presented together. He always said that if you are trying to get to a solution, if you want to solve a problem creatively, you want to get to a good solution, you can never get there if you don't understand the essence of what you're dealing with. So I repeat this, in your university, like universities all over South Africa, where there's ongoing conflict and whatever, you will never get it right if you don't deep down understand what is the essence that we're really dealing with here. And this essence is true of anything. In the way that you develop products or services, it is critical in relationships, in whatever, to at any given moment understand the essence of what you are dealing with. And unfortunately, we have found in our work all over the world that this is often where people get it wrong. They go to step 2, they start paying money, time, effort, and eventually they don't get to the right solution. Why? They never started correctly at the essence. So for a leader, that kind of ability to be able to zap through everything and get to the essence is critical. Aristotle said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. That was Aristotle's essence of education. I had a similar quote that I have about innovation. In one of the books that I wrote, I said that innovation of the mind without innovating the heart is no innovation at all. You must get the buy-in from the heart as well as the mind. And I think it's really important. If one had to do a survey amongst your students, And then you would ask them, how many of my lecturers are touching my mind, and how many are touching my heart, and how many are touching both? It's critical to understand that. And, I mean, it's the ancient saying of your students, ancient saying that says that they will forget everything that you taught them, but they will never forget how you made them feel. This is the truth here too. And this is where we get it wrong. This is where teachers and schools get it wrong. They don't understand this essence of Aristotle. Second quote about change. Change is the essence of life, and be willing to surrender what you are for what you could become. Difficult to do that. It's very difficult to do that. Guru said the essence of mathematics is not to make simple things complicated, but to make complicated things simple. You know this as well as I do. I've always believed that the more you know about your subject, the more you know about it, something, the simpler you can present it. And then you don't need any highfalutin words and stuff and whatever. You don't need any of those, because you can bring it across in simple terms. The less you know, you start to hide it behind. I listen to these interviews on the radio with these kind of live words. Then I know that this person knows nothing. And nothing. He hides it, and he's got a couple of these high words. And again, I wish I had the time to do a survey and spend a week at this university and listen to your lecturers to see, where do they fit in? Where do they fit in? I've learned this over many years. I can tell you this is absolutely the truth. Absolutely true, and it goes for any subject that you teach. By the way, interesting mathematics. Last year we trained 200 teachers of mathematics, teaching them how do you teach mathematics with your whole brain. And the incredible dramatic impact it had. We followed them and how did he, because again, listening to them and the way they explain mathematics, as I said, the less you know. Aristotle, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. It's a very important quote, especially at university level. This is a very important essence quote. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Which means that there should be an openness at the university of conveying knowledge, but understanding that knowledge need not to be accepted, but it can be molded, it can be this, it can be round, and Storrance always said it needs to be incubated. Allow the knowledge to be incubated, let it move around. That's what he's saying. That is the mark of an open mind. Unfortunately, especially at primary and high school levels, I've seldom found this. Because there you are given stuff and you give the stuff back and that's it. You're not allowed to come up with your own, not allowed. There's no space for that. So the first then is the understanding the essence, and the leader to be able to create this university, this organization, understand at any given moment the essence that you are dealing with. Because if you miss that, you basically miss everything. The second one of the leader is to be able to promote creative thinking. I've tried to promote this my whole life, in a sense, and we are still just at the beginning of the journey after all these years when it comes to creativity. What is interesting, in 1950, I don't know if you know this, but in the 1950s, it was a very important decade in creativity, in modern creativity. It's like, in a sense, the beginning of modern creativity, the 1950s. Are you going to sit close to me?
Next.
You happy with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sitting next to your cafe.
In the 1950, J.P. Guilford, who was the president of the American Psychological Association, at the annual conference, he made a profound speech. In 1950, he said that there is a complete lack of creativity in American schools. There is a complete lack of creativity in American schools. I today can get up and say the same thing about South African schools. This is now 70 years later. I can get up today and say the same thing that Guilford said 70 years ago, 1950. It actually had a massive impact, Guilford's words, a massive impact. Because in the 1950s, giant names started to emerge in creativity with a huge impact. People like Torrance they started to come up and have an impact on schools and institutions and universities and so on. But today, as I said, so many years later, we still have to talk about this. And still today, after all these years, people sort of still ask, but really, what do you mean by creativity what do you really, there's still that same questions of 70 years ago still being asked today. I mean, I don't know if I have the Bono quote here. Yeah, there it is. De Bono said, "There is no doubt that creativity is the most important human resource of all. Without creativity, there would be no progress, and we would be forever repeating the same patterns." Absolutely so. Absolutely so. I mean, you know the stats. I've in every talk, I give it to people again. For 7 years, part of my initial doctoral research was on the creativity of children. And we keep on going back there to see, but as things change, but no, it hasn't. Where we find again, year after year, that 98% of children between 0 and 3 worldwide, we did this in 15 countries, that 98% have creativity at a superior level. 98% of human beings, which means basically all human beings, have a massive ability to be creative when they're in that early age of 0 to 3. But then it drops dramatically. At the age of 10, it is only 32%. The destruction of our planet and of our continent and everything happens between the ages of 3 and 10, by the parenting and the education that happens between 3 and 10. That's where it happens. Where creativity is in a sense just pulled out of you because of the systems and, as I said, the parenting and the teaching and the education. And there is no way that we can, now at the age of 25, it's only 2%. There is no way, and the bonus words, there's no way that we can survive. Why do you think we are struggling so tremendously in the world? Why can't we can invent beautiful new cell phones, yes. But when it comes to the bigger issues, the big issues of our planet, just can't solve it. We can't solve poverty, conflicts, it carries on, and it's terrible. We can't. Because we have no respect for creativity. We have no respect at our universities, our organizations, our schools. We have no respect for it. I sat for 2 weeks with a group from the space scientists of NASA. Very serious people. Those scientists are serious people. And the whole issue was about where are we today in the world, and then creating scenarios, where will we be in 20, 30, 40 years. And this came out of that and these are brilliant scientists. We all sat there together and they sort of putting their science on the table. At the end, what they said was very clear. They said, if we do not put in a massive effort, and it's called deliberate creativity, by the way, to regain our creativity, because it's never lost, it's just there to be taken out again. But it needs deliberate steps. What NASA said, if we don't do that everywhere, then this planet cannot last more than another 40 years. That's what they said. Cannot last another 40 years. Look at the state of our country at the moment. We can't solve the problems because we fall back on outdated stuff, on yesterday's solutions that didn't work yesterday, that we're trying it again now. We need a revolution of creativity. We need it at our universities, and leadership needs to initiate it. A revolution of it. So where do we start? What do you need to understand about, let me just go back. Where do we sort of begin the journey? Why is there so many people here today? Eh? Can't you tell them, can't they stay outside? Eh? We need, it's not highfalutin stuff that you need to understand. There's a definite process. The steps that I needed to take. When I embarked on my own creativity journey, I already had a doctorate. But I realized that it basically, and I'm saying this now, it basically meant nothing. If I don't add creativity to this knowledge and these insights, it means nothing. It's the creativity that gives you the edge. It doesn't matter what you do. A teacher, an engineer, whatever you do, it's the creative insights that makes you different of other people. You look at the world differently. You see differently. You're fresh. It's that. And so we keep on doing old stuff. We keep on doing old stuff. What are the capitals of Europe? They teach the grade 7s. Who cares what the capital? Who cares about that? But we keep on doing stuff that has really no meaning in 2016. But we keep on doing it. That's what I think it was. Can't remember. Warren Buffett, maybe one of those sons, said, "There is nothing more useless than keep on doing things efficiently that doesn't need to be done at all." Exactly, that is crazy. Absolute crazy. So where do we start? Where do we begin? We kind of need to understand that creativity is also an attitude. You look, if this was a room and there were 3-year-old children in this room, if I asked you, are you creative? You'd all jump up and say yes. That's an attitude. That's an attitude. I can do it. I have the ability, the skills. I can do it. If I ask you, are you creative? You will look around and you see no. Yeah. You've got no creative attitude. As simple as that. It's an attitude. It's an attitude of that there are solutions out there. It's this positive look at life that maybe we're not seeing it now, but it's still out there kind of thing. It's an attitude. It's a culture that you create, where you support one another, even if the ideas are crazy sometimes. You know that's not going to work. Listen to all these ideas, because something may pop out of it. It's a culture. And it's an environment. And environments are created by people, by you. You create the environments where students or your colleagues can sort of be open and free to come up with newness and solutions. You create an environment. I say to teachers, don't care about the environment of the teacher next door. Your environment is here. And there you can create miracles. Don't look next door. Here you create miracles. You see, I'm still a believer in miracle making. Totally believe in that. But it comes to you. Not next door. It's you. To be able to do that. But eventually we would begin this creative journey too. I say, but what are the skills that you need? Because that's the first step. To call yourself creative, or to call this university creative. And as leaders, to call yourself creative. It starts with skills. What are the skills that we look at? Now Torrance, my mentor Paul Torrance, that had the greatest impact on my life. He developed a test. Because before him, people believed that you cannot measure creativity. You can't assess it. And he came up with a test called the TTC test, the Torrance test of creative thinking. And in this test, he measures children, preschool right through to adults. He measures certain primary skills and then secondary skills. So we would always, with a group like this, start off with primary skills. What do you need? First of all, those skills. Fluency would be the first skill that I believe you need to develop. Fluency means the ability to have many ideas. That's what fluency means. It's basically a lot of ideas. Many ideas. It's a very easy skill to develop. It's a very easy skill. It develops dramatically, quickly. Not to sort of fall back on the 2 or 3 ideas you always have, but to always have many ideas. That's fluency. Flexibility means different kinds of ideas. I'm not going through all of them. Let me illustrate what I mean. If I had to give you a glass. Is it a glass this? What is it? It looks like glass. What can you do with this glass? You say to me, I can drink water from this glass, I can drink beer from this glass, I can drink wine from this glass, I can drink that in a glass, and that's fluency. Many ideas. But it's not flexibility, because it's the same kind of idea. Flexibility would be, well, you can put a sticker onto it and advertise or whatever. Or you can put sand in it and plant a little plant in it. Or you can turn it around and use it as a hat for a doll. Or you can put it down and stand and reach high, or you can break it and use it as a weapon. So, ta-da-ta-da. That's flexibility. That's different kinds of ideas. And the moment you go into that mode of different kinds of ideas, then originality just comes much more easy. The newness comes out. The original idea, the new idea, then pops out. It'll take 2 to 3 days, not more than that. If you focus on those skills, most of those skills, for you to develop and improve probably by a few 1,000% in your ability to be creative. Because to be creative, to be a creative leader, or to train other people, you've got to be creative to be able to do so. As a parent, you can't expect your children to be original and flexible and all that stuff if you're not. If you're the same old boring ideas that you've always had, you know. Can't do that. You've got to have it first. You look at that and ask yourself, how creative are you when it comes to it? How creative are you? You see. Okay. Apart from the skills, there are 2 types of creativity that I think is important to you all as a university. 2 types. And ask yourself, if you look at those 2 types, do you see yourself somewhere there? These are the 2 types. First of all, let's look at the bottom one, making better. Creativity that you use your creativity to just improve what you do. You improve the teaching styles of although you teach students, for instance, although you manage people, you kind of improve, you change all the time. You change products all the time, you kind of do this, you're improving things all the time. That is one type of creativity, and an important type of creativity. The word adapt would be also connected to that type of creativity. You adapt things. But then there's another kind of creativity that we call white space creativity, where you basically create something completely different, something new, that's not been around, it's new. The term white space, I got the term white space from studying the Australian netball team a number of years ago. Because the Australian netball team were amazingly doing unbelievably well, and they were not supposed to do well, but they were beating all other teams. So there was something there that people were not seeing what they're supposed to see. And so in studying this, it's interesting what we found. In any team sport, soccer, netball, rugby, what happens is that a ball is either kicked or passed player to player to player to player, and then it stops. That is called a pattern. It's called a pattern. And then there's another few of these, and there's another pattern. So in a match, there are a number of these patterns, and your opposition then would study your patterns, and they would know exactly what you're doing. Okay? You become predictable. Yeah, it's interesting. I always think back of my research on 10-month-old babies. The first thing I noticed about them, they were completely unpredictable. If I put the baby down on this floor, you wouldn't have a clue where that baby would go to. Anyway, but now as you sit here, you're completely predictable. Completely. Sad, isn't it? Sad. So you become this by studying this, because we've been involved in international sport for many years now. So your opponents study your patterns, and then they know exactly what you're going to do, and they can defend against you. It's like the Springbok rugby team. You know exactly what they were going to do, and all teams know exactly what they're going to do, and they defend against them. And then they're surprised that they don't win. You see. Now what the Australian netball team did was this. They eliminated the pattern. Their players did not pass the ball player to player. They passed the ball in the open space that I called the white space. And the other players just ran into it. You know what I'm saying? It's like Messi plays soccer. He doesn't kick to the player, they run into the space. You getting what I'm saying? Same thing with netball. And you can do it with any of these sports. That you don't, it's open space, it's white space. But then you need to train your players totally differently. Then they need to be anticipation, intuition, all those other things that are like Greek to most sports. But it's 2016 and it's still just foreign to them. We've worked with many of these teams where they've done it. It's unbelievable. You're unbeatable if you're able to do that. You're unbeatable. If you got everything else right, if you can do that, it's unreal, you see. So white space is this newness that you create. Totally different. Working with A.B. de Villiers now for some time, and we're launching a whole brain cricket app within 2 weeks working with him. And you know, I evaluate every innings of his now in the IPL from a whole brain perspective, and I tell him when he doesn't get runs, because it's always the one quadrant that lets him down, always just the one quadrant. They really got to work so hard at. If he doesn't, he knows he's not going to do well. But the point is this, you need both of these. Now my question to you, thinking of your university, and you yourself or your university, can you think of, let's say, creativity where you use your creativity to improve? Can you think of situations? I'm sure you can. There's probably forever just, you know, improvement. Something that you add, something that you do differently, something you do this. That would be my first question. I do need to urge you, when you come together as leaders and you have your little meetings, put this on the table too. Start talking about creativity where you can think of where you improve things, but also creativity where you've come up with something totally different than you. Can you think of anything at this university that is white space? Anything that has happened maybe in the past 2-3 years? Not easy. I've asked this to many super corporates, and they find it very difficult to come up with an answer there. And maybe one of the reasons we're struggling is because we can't get our brain into that white space thinking anymore, where we do need solutions that we've never had before. And I do think we need it now. It's going to need solutions that we've never had before, and that's white space. But we don't train our brain to get there. We train our brain just to stay around here and be okay and survive, you know, and drive home and eat and whatever. Think about this. You, the leaders, you need to think about this. You influencing other people, think about this. Let your students think about this. Let your students start thinking about this. Because it's up to them to use both types of creativity, both. And maybe there are amongst your students who've actually come up with this white space, and I'm sure they have. Sure they have. Sure.
I think one of the problems now is in universities that we are compliance driven.
Yeah.
We need to comply with so many things just in order to survive in university. And it is seen that a leader should be predictable in everything they do. It's
yeah,
to be a
I know what you're saying.
character trait.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Okay. The other critical characteristic of the leader to be able to create new worlds is that you should have both of these. You should never allow your courage and your passion to drop below 9 out of 10. Because then your influence drops. Then your impact drops. I've over the years you realize that creativity, for instance, doesn't stand alone. It's embedded in many other things too. So I know many creative people with the most incredible ideas, people who are just amazing, but nothing happens. They've got no impact on the world. They've nothing. They've made no dents in the universe. Nothing. Because they don't have the passion and they don't have the courage to make it happen. These are critical factors in an organization like yourself. You must not fool around with your courage and your passion. It's not rah-rah words, this. It's of the utmost importance to make things happen that you want to happen, to make happen. You see, where we often also... Sit jy nou agter my rug? Kom maar met my raai wat ek skryf hier so. Where we often get it wrong. Everywhere, business, education, everywhere. The word productivity is a word that is used freely. We must be more productive. Everywhere, doesn't matter where you go. This is the word, this is it. But you see, this is not an essence word. And what I said earlier this morning, if you don't get the essence right, you get nothing right. You've got to ask the question, who are the people everywhere in the world talk who produce? They're always the people with high energy. People with high energy, business, education, sport, doesn't matter, high energy people produce. Where do you get your energy from? You only get it from one place, from your passion. The question should not be asked here, the question should be asked there. You should go into a classroom and then ask the students about their passion level. Because it's like this, they are like this, everything is like this. You see, the point is so clear to me. We just sort of put those concepts on one side and then we go this way. Instead of understanding that it's right in the middle of everything. Of everything. And again, coming back to the super organizations of the world. Gallup, for instance, last year again did the survey amongst the top 20 companies in the world. They do it on a regular basis. Those companies that are forever the best. And they asked, why are you so good? And the response is always because of the people that work for us. And those people have certain qualities. Top of the list, people who work here have more passion than people that work in other companies. Creativity, all those things right at the top. So what Gallup said, if you can lift the passion of the people in your organization by 10%, you will double your turnover. So it's not about the turnover, it's about the people. You see, I think we get the essence wrong so often. And I know it's tough at university, especially now in South Africa, very tough. And it's so maybe easy for you to allow your own passion just to drop. Maybe just to go through the motions and come to work and go back. But that is devastating and that is killing, if that's the case. Because often then life isn't worth living if that's the case. So passion needs to be up there all the time. You need to find ways to sustain your passion. Because you see, you cannot motivate people and in a sense to get their passion up if your passion is low. How do you get it right? You can't expect your own children to be passionate if you gefrik. How can you do that? It's impossible. You can't do that. This is vital stuff, this. I know many years ago I already mentioned to some of you a book that a very good colleague of ours wrote, The Forever Mind. Jacqueline Wonder, a beautiful book on the forever mind. Studying people between the ages of 80 and 105 because of this longevity projections now. That people will live to 105. And so the whole thing was, if you retired at 60 or 65, what are you going to do the next 40 years? How are you going to live your life? So we actually worked out a whole program around that. What do you need to do? But what Jacqueline Wonder said when she studied these people of 80 were amazing people. Amazing people. Number one on the list, why they were so, she found 9 qualities in all of them. It was the immense passion that they had. 94 years old, but can't wait to wake up in the morning to grab the day, kind of thing. And that passion, that kind of thing sustains your energy and keeps you healthy, of course. And the other thing we find in corporates, when we work with them, is this: passionate people never stay away from work. Why would they stay away from work? passionate people who work in this organization will not, why would they stay away? It's those people with the low passions that have all the excuses why not to come to work. But we still don't talk about it. We talk about other stuff. Instead of talking about this, talking about your students, make this part of discussion. And although it's an inner thing, you know, what do you do that you can do, you know, to in a sense, to enhance the passion in people? That it can make them sort of excited to come to work kind of thing. Nope, manual. I guess. Now the manual is also stopped. Oh, there we go. Stop there, but not here. 2 quotes then on passion, on passion and courage. One person with passion is better than 40 people merely interested. And then Rollo May said the opposite of courage is in our society is not cowardice. It is conformity. Again, with courage, for me, my whole passion for courage started those years when Paul Torrance was still my mentor. Because one day I remember he said that creative people can't perform miracles, but they are always in danger of crucifixion. And that sort of stuck with me because what he basically said was that you just got to keep on going. There would always be people that will try to pull you back and stab you in the back or whatever, but you just got to keep on going. And to do that, you need the courage. A number of years ago, I wrote a TV series on courage called The Courage to, it was 26 episodes, The Courage to Shake Hands with Tomorrow. And what I did in that series was to identify different kinds of courage. And I think this is important to you too, also the students. What kind of courage do you personally need? When my 2 sons were in matric in the school where they were in matric, I gave a talk to the staff, and I said to them, when they leave here at the end of the year matric, and I look at you as teachers, I would ask myself, what did I expect from you to instill in my children? Of course, as parents, you do it too. And number one on the list, I expected over the years that you would have instilled courageousness in them, courage, that they would walk out here at the age of 17 and grab life, not be overwhelmed by the world out there. Much more important to me than anything else. That courage, and again, like creativity, courage can be developed. The first thing that I remember that also what Torrance said was that creativity it is teachable and it is learnable. It is teachable and it is learnable. Same with courage. It's unreal when you begin that courage grows in you. But you know that as well as I do. That probably the one thing that prevents you from doing what you want to do or need to do is the lack of courage. I remember so many families coming to me and saying, listen, man says to me, the husband says, I've worked for this company for 15 years now. I want to go somewhere else, change my life. And you look at it, you evaluate the situation, you say, yeah, go for it. That happened to me the other day, and I saw that same family 2 years later now. Talking to them again, and nothing has happened. They're exactly where they were 2 years ago. Everything was in place. They just didn't have the courage to take the first step. Isn't that what's missing? The courage to take that first step. And I think this is a critical kind of thing. And again, and you must, as I say, if you have the opportunity to read up on courage, read up a little bit on it. A couple of years ago, I was working with a big retail company in Cape Town. The CEO of the company started to climb mountains at the age of 40. Every year he climbed a higher mountain. And then 2 years ago he attempted Everest. And he got right to the last stage. It was the last day, and he would have been at the top. It was a beautiful day too. So the morning they would have started, and that morning he absolutely just froze. He couldn't move. He was so frightened. The fear just overwhelmed him completely. Couldn't go on. And then he came back, and he was absolutely, it was massive disappointment. stress and everything. You know, why couldn't I carry on the last bit? So I sat with him and I tried to understand it with him. What went wrong here? And then interesting, what came up was, if you climb Everest before you start, there's certain documents that you got to kind of fill in and complete. And the last page of the last document, there's a paragraph that asks the question, what should we do with your body? Yeah. It is, yeah, and it's, he said in some strange way, this just came into his brain, paralyzed him, just paralyzed him. So last year again, he went right to the top and he conquered Everest. That was out, it was gone. And so this whole process he went through. But then he said these beautiful words to me. He said, you know, what I learned was that conquering Everest, whatever your Everest is, but conquering Everest for him, he said, had very little to do with physical courage. It had everything to do with spiritual courage. Isn't that a beautiful thing to say? You see, and I think the kind of courage that you would like, social courage, often we find in children, they lack social courage. The courage to enter a people's space, they're always outside the group. They haven't got the social courage to go on a stage and perform or recite. That kind of, and when they get that courage, their whole life changes, you see. So in your sense, what is the courage that you need in a sense to become life-changing for you? Don't live a life, as I said, without passion, but also without courage. It's not worth it. Not worth it. Amen. You know what is interesting about these things happening here? Is that it's good for me that this happens. I tell you why it's good. Because now I've got the opportunity to choose good emotions or bad emotions. It's wonderful. You must actually pray for a couple of these incidents every day. You know, that you can say, I can choose patience or I can choose irritation or whatever. You see, it's good. It's very good for you. The very next one, and I'm looking at my time. No, we've got enough time. Is for the leader to kind of understand that one of your roles is to identify what is ordinary still in your life and in the life of your university and maybe also your students. This is the model that some of you may remember, but this is a very, very important model in our organization. It's a very, very important model. We would always begin with an organization or with even an individual as if you are ordinary. Now that may, if you're working with A.B. de Villiers, to call him ordinary is maybe not so right. But you know, it is interesting that those great people that you work with, they're very happy to start with you there. Because then there's still a long journey ahead, you see. So we would start with ordinary. And we would ask certain questions to determine what is still ordinary in your organization. I'll say, bye, donkey. What is still ordinary in your own life, in the life of this university? What is ordinary? Let me give you a few examples of ordinary. Ordinary, a person or an ordinary organization loves to talk about problems. When they meet, there are always a number of problems that they have to sort out. It's a problem-orientated organization. Now you may say, geez, but you've got a lot of problems at this university. You may say that, sure. But that should never be the basis of who you are as an organization. Because you see, you know, Brain 101. Brain 101 is that the brain doesn't care what you put into it. It doesn't care what you put into it. What you put in, you get back. That's it. So if you keep on putting rubbish in your brain, you get rubbish back. And then you wonder, why can't I escape this? You will never escape it. Because you keep on putting rubbish in, of nonsense, or problems, or moaning, and that's what you get back. You'll never escape it. You've got to change this whole way that your talk, the talk of this organization, your own talk, that in all talk, change that from the ordinary talk to something else. Because if you keep on doing that, you'll never escape it as an organization, or as a person for that matter. We worked with, we're doing a follow-up program again now, this in June, with BMW. We will be training like 20, 21 groups. When we work with BMW, we to sort them out, to see where they are. One of the questions we asked them was, how many cars does the average BMW salesperson sell per month? That's one of the cars. So we asked them how many cars. They said 7 cars. My next question to them was, why 7 cars? And no one could tell me why 7 cars. You see, you get to work there, you have a meeting, you get training, and then, and you get told 7 cars. So what happens is this, it becomes a belief. It becomes a belief. And then you live according to that belief. That's how life works. You know that as well as I do. That's how life works. You start believing things and you live accordingly. You see. One of my books that, after all these years, and it's sort of reappeared in many forms and shapes, that has outsold all the other books, is a book called Am I Clever or Am I Stupid? I wrote that book because I saw at a very early age that children started to form beliefs about themselves, very early. Beliefs that they're average, they're stupid, they can't do this, whatever, based on nonsense. But then they live accordingly and they die accordingly. This is how it works. So some of all your students, when they come here, they have certain beliefs about themselves. And like the BMW, they sell 7 cars. You see, it's a belief system. And the first thing we need to challenge is what are the beliefs we've got? Beliefs about ourselves, about this university. What are the beliefs? Are these beliefs still okay? In most cases, not okay. In most cases, we just kept on with the beliefs. It's not okay. It's really not okay. So we started our training program with BMW, and we wanted to take the, yeah, we wanted to then move them up to the next level. We take them through all the stuff that blocks them from getting to the stretch level, all those things. It's a whole program we worked out with them. That the language can change. Also in the schools where we work. We operate in 13, the poorest of poorer schools in South Africa, where it's all sponsored. The same thing. We would unpack the school where they are, the language that they talk in these schools. And then try and help them to move up. And so in the case of BMW, we said, or they said, 11 cars. For a period of 12 months, we will train them, show them how to sell cars with their whole brain, and not only from their own dominance, and all the other stuff that comes with it, all the language they needed to say, and how do they enhance their own attraction, and so on and so on, all sort of stuff. It took them not 12 months, it took them only 7 months to get to that new belief, that new target. It took them 7 months, and last year, July, they had the best month in the history of BMW. They moved up, different stuff in their brain, moved away from ordinary, you see. But you know the concept beyonder. For us, it's everything about becoming a beyonder. That's the whole issue. The whole issue is people are born beyonders. They've got all these qualities. And so we move down. The question is, how do we move up again? And again, we will not solve South Africa's problems or the world's problems or whatever problems, this university, if we stick around here and think our thinking over here instead of our thinking over there. Because the beyonder thinking is not a problem thinking. They don't ignore problems. No, that's not what it is, but it's not dominating them. It's all about possibility thinking. The question on Monday mornings when these we've got many, I'm telling you, we now have organizations right through the world that we've accredited, we've given them certificates. But we regard them as beyond the schools or organizations because we believe that they've got there. But everything then, what they do, is about beyond. They would come on Monday mornings on a meeting. Instead of just starting out with what will be the problems this week, they would say to one another, what was impossible last week that can become possible this week. This is how beyond this kind of think. I know that you're not interested in cricket, but the history of cricket is kind of interesting. The 50 over cricket. the one-day cricket. It used to be only 5-day cricket, and then in the 1970s they started what was called one-day cricket, 50-over cricket, one-day cricket. And when they started that in the 1970s, the belief that if you score 200 runs, you will win a match. And the belief was this, that if you score 4 runs and over, much more than the 5 days, it was only 2 runs, that's enough, you'll win. And that happened. For years and years, getting 2. And then in the 1980s, the West Indies had a very good team, and they started to hit 250 runs, still 50 overs. And then in the 1990s, Sri Lanka went up to 300, still 50 overs. Then a few years ago here in Johannesburg, both Australia and South Africa hit more than 430 runs, still 50 overs. My point is this. What do you believe? What's possible? If you believe 200 runs is possible, you get 200 runs. But if you believe anything is possible, virtually. I was asked by Rudy Schlabe in a radio interview, how fast can a human being run? I said, sir, I don't know, but I would guess, if I would think from this level, ordinary, I would say to myself, well, Bolt runs 100 meters in 9.5 or whatever, and so maybe in 5 years it'll be 9.4, and then in 10 years it'll be... This is the way I will think. And this is the way I will train my athletes. This is the way I will empower them. But I said to her this, I think probably 8 seconds. But then the brain will need to run the body, and not vice versa. And I've seen that happening. I've been involved in the Olympic Games. I can see already it is there. But if you put all the little effort and only think that you can train the body like they do in our sport, and then working with someone like A.B. de Villiers who understands you need to integrate the brain completely, then you become a completely so superstar that even in India, people see you nearly as a god. Because you understand that the brain is absolutely even more important than the body here, you see. And then you can write a book of 110 pages in 4.5 minutes, not because you're a big deal, but because you look at the world from that angle. If you write books like you do anything from the ordinary level, it'll take you 12 months, 18 months to write a book. That's ordinary. That's how people write books. And then you take to the publisher and it needs to be published. It's a long thing. Many years ago, we moved away from that. I said to my colleagues, let's do it differently. This year alone, we've written 3 books. We've written a book, How to Raise a Super Child. We've just finished, a book is nearly finished. We sort of go with a TV series on, the Afrikaans version is written in English and Afrikaans at the same time, but the Afrikaans version is Wil jy maar word? Do you want to become thin? It's not that, it's not going to be like that. And then the last book that we're starting out writing next Friday is a book that I'm writing with a person who's incredibly wealthy, and he understands how to use his brain in creating wealth. And the book is called Rich Brain, Poor Brain. And so, but the point is that if you're right there, you'll never be able to do that in your life. Never be able to do that. You've got to think totally differently, completely differently about everything, but also about writing books. And therefore, that Guinness book that 110 pages in 4.5 minutes, and actually it took 15 hours to design it, to make it beautiful, get the covers going, everything. So from nothing on the table to the CNA exclusive books was 4.5 minutes to write it, 15 hours to get it ready, beautify it and so on. 15 hours and 4.5 minutes, and not 18 months to get the book out. I'm not going to tell you how we did it. But when you have that level, so my friends, it's this kind of thing. If you look at yourself and look at your university, I am sure many parts of this university are still, you would call it completely ordinary. But there are probably spots that have moved up in different cases. And I think that's important to know that and to understand that. These little movements that have happened, that have already positioned you elsewhere. It's like BMW again. When we got to 11 cars, BMW, there were people selling 22 cars already. They understood the thing. They moved right beyond that. My friend Nico, who was a teacher, said to me 20 years ago, he was actually director of in education. He said he doesn't want to do that. He wants to sell second-hand cars. Big change. Nico, while the rest of the people in his street, what is that street in Pretoria where they sell all these cars? You know, they're in Pretoria North, you know, somewhere. Yeah, you know where it is. Where they sell like 10 cars a month or so. Nico sells between 50 and 60 cars a month. You see? He does it differently. He does it from there completely differently. Uniquely he does it. So I'm sure in this university there are beyond the spots here. The question is, how can you as a leader then sort of in a sense get them up, get bits up that you can anchor yourself, where you have control over your environment, where you have to manage your space. You see. This is an important model to sort of keep on looking. We come back to this every time we work with organizations. Now most of you would know the brain, so let me just kind of do a little bit of recapping here too. I truly believe now, after so many decades of being involved in developing this stuff, that it would be very difficult for any organization to even just survive if you don't function with your whole brain. I can't see it happening. What is interesting in the business world that we work in is organizations will take this brain and then they will see where are they good at, but where are they really not functioning, and then they will start, filling those gaps, because that's what we need to do. For me, the brain has become the point of departure, even for creativity. Let me just put it up first so we know what we're talking about. For me, it has become also for creativity, because it really doesn't matter. Initially, it matters when you see where your dominances are. You know and you appreciate where you are. But you know in the world that you do, because you work in a people's world, that what really matters is your ability to move in and out of these dimensions at ease. At ease. To pick up the clue when a student or your colleague walks into your office, you could pick up the clue and say, okay, I may be over here, bottom left, but the person walking into my office is over there, and then you need to go into that dimension and communicate and dialogue in that dimension. That is what we train the BMW people. Because if you let me give you an example. If you're over here and you're selling BMWs, over here in the bottom left, you would be a very detailed kind of person. L2 people are down the bottom, are detailed, but they love to explain things in detail and step by step and processes and so on. So if I come into the showroom and I want to buy a BMW, and this salesman can't pick up who I am, this person comes to me friendly and say, hey sir, look at this BMW, yeah, it can go so fast, the petrol consumption, you look at the tires, and he gives massive details about the car and what. I stop him. Because let's say I'm an Imagineer, I'll stop him, hey, I'm only looking for the blue one, The point is this, you need to understand that I'm looking for a blue one immediately. And this is what we've actually now developed an instrument on the phone where in 2.5 minutes you can actually pick up the clue and you can sell in that person's brain or communicate or whatever. That's the way you've got to go now, you see. You've got to go that way. Parents who are really good parents are whole brain parents. Parents who eventually look back and say, geez, man, I had this brilliant relationship with my one child. Yes, my dear Anna Oki. Oh, geez, where did it go wrong? It always goes wrong when you didn't pick up the clue of the brain of the other child. It always goes wrong there. Once again, if the mother's over here, this neat mother, this orderly mother, this mother that's on time and everything, 100%, there's nothing wrong with that mother. And if your one child, Sally's like you, who comes home 2 o'clock, puts her little bag down, says, Mom, I've got to eat quickly, I've got homework to do, and then she goes and she studies, and 7 o'clock when you eat, she says, wonderful, neat little room, and things like that. You say to your neighbor, oh, what a wonderful child this was, Sally. Wonderful because she's like you. But little Johnny, who comes home, who's over here, he just throws his bag down, and he's got one sentence for 12 years while he's at school. Mom, I've got no homework. That kind of chaotic room, never on time. So with that child, you always have a struggle. You think there must be something wrong with this child. And at school, they also think there's something wrong with this child. So he's got this coming from all sides now. I think Rochelle may have told you that, she did a doctorate on this brain and discipline. And 500 adults and children. She found that in 500 children that schools identified as naughty, or our instrument all put them here. They were all the school saw them as naughty. And so they've got it from all sides, And they form, later on, a belief about themselves that maybe they are wrong, in a sense, you see. So the point I'm trying to make, it really doesn't matter eventually where your profile is. Initially, to have a look and to understand it. But you're in a world of people every day. And you need to be able to reach them. Not only a few of them. Not only a few of them. You need to be able to reach them. That's why whole brain teaching is critical. Is absolutely essential. When we trained the 200 mathematics teachers last year, and we again saw when we did the initial research that if you hear, for instance, as the mathematics, you teach from there. It's basically from where you teach. And you miss the 70+% who are over here. It's they that walk out and either don't understand what you're teaching, and they've got this dumb thing about them, or they don't like your class. They don't like you because your teaching dominance is not their learning dominance. You never meet. You can't have that anymore. It's impossible to have that. Not in 2016 anymore. You've got to teach every subject whole brain, 40 minutes. It's not rocket science to understand what to do. Easy to do it. When I come into a room like this, I don't know your brain profile, some of you. I need to, before I walk in, I need to understand that I'm talking to an audience that is all over the show here. You're all over the show. So if I come in here and I talk only from my dominance, I will again, I have to sort of move around in the brain to be able to reach all of you. This is what you've got to do. If you speak or teach or poem or communicate, you need to understand this. There's no escape anymore. Not a nice to have anymore. All these instruments I developed, remember, didactical instruments, not psychometric, didactical. These are all learning instruments. Learning and development. You need to take it and you learn from it. You grow from this. You get bigger and better. You sell more cars. One of the best examples that I've used, and some of you may remember this, best just stands out. When Tim Odisi went through our program as a practitioner, he was still with 702 those years. Immediately when he went back, he took this brain like this, and he put it next to his microphone. I was there, saw him, put it next to him. And when people phoned in, he would ask one or two questions, and he would say, I'm talking to a realist. And then he would talk factual language, talk about facts, information. That's what the realist wants, happy. Next person phones in, I'm talking to an empathizer, and he talks, saying, how's your family? Soft and gentle language. So asking one or two questions, pick up the clue, and so it doesn't matter where Tim Odisi was, he was moving into the brain of the people who were phoning in. 3 months later, he's voted South Africa's #1 talk show host. 3 months. Sure. 3 months. By understanding how to use his whole brain. You see. The higher you go up in the leadership, the more you need to understand how to use this. Because if you don't, the more people you are leaving behind. You see? This is absolutely critical. And I know many of your students use this instrument to make decisions about subjects and programs and so on. It's very, very important to do so. What we're seeing now too is that more and more companies are using the job instruments, the whole brain job instruments. Because what we have also found, as I say, when you use the brain, you use it everywhere. You're not only here and there and here and there or wherever. It becomes who you are. You use it everything. For instance, in the job instrument, for instance, where we've seen these long-winded job descriptions that people have, which sometimes makes no sense. You've got to read through 5 pages to understand what is the job. The brain instrument, the whole brain job instrument tells you exactly, maybe this is the job. So it's an L1 job. So instead of writing a long-winded job description, you write that next to this, maybe 20 little items here, L1. So if I have to explain to you what is your job, it's L1. A little bit here, but this is what it is. So if you're looking for the best candidate and it's an L1 job, you look for an L1 person. You know what I'm trying to say? It's accurate sort of understanding who do you need. Your students. If your student has a brain profile like this, but he wants to become a dentist, then you say to him, geez, man, if you become a dentist, every morning at 8 o'clock, you've got to go in there and focus and stay there, and your brain wants to go everywhere. You're not going to be a nice dentist. You're going to do the little tricks in the man, you know. The point is this, the students, when they know, Columbia University in New York, you know, one of the top 5 in the world probably, they've been using our instruments for 10 years now. Amazing. They say they can't do without it because it gives direction to students before they make a decision where to go to. So let's see, what does your decision look like and what does your brain look like? You know, it changes everything if you can do that right at the beginning too, you see. I mentioned earlier that I've started to develop many other instruments. One I think is of critical importance is followership. And the first 6 months of this instrument being used in organizations, it's really given us a lot of joy. Massively, and companies are saying, geez, this is really changing everything. So what happens, we ask people, everyone in the organization, how would you like to be managed? In a sense, how would you like to be treated in a sense? So I walked into the CEO's office of a big corporate in Sandton last week. When I walked into his office, he's the CEO. He has got 10 executives that report to him. If you walk into his office there, on the wall, and framed, he's got every executive's followership profile on the wall. So if Johnny walks in, he says, Johnny wants to be managed in an R2 way. He sits with Johnny and talks, how's your family doing? That's the way he will start off. When Jill walks in, she's L1, he knows it's clinical, give me facts. So he now manages them in the way they want to be managed. Let me tell you this, it creates an incredible positive revolution because people feel they are now being treated in an incredibly good way. We did that in the factories everywhere. Unbelievable changes have happened because you now know how people want to be treated in a sense. And I think often we guess about it, you see. Often we guess about it. So maybe just in some way you need to maybe just have a look at this instrument and see how it can work, can also work for you. So again, to move on then from here is that, yes, sure, those who have not done it, I'm sure most of you have done these profiles, is to kind of have a look first of all who you are, but then remember the first step, nearly immediate step for you in the people's world that you're in is, how do I start using it in a whole brain kind of way? And you use it in teaching, for instance. Understand, how do you teach with the whole brain? You do it in learning. To understand how some students learn with prefer to learn with those dimensions. Other students prefer, today we don't have the time. I'm not deliberately rushing, I just don't have the time to. But this in a sense, you need to spend a morning with this in a sense, to understand this, you see. And how do you learn, with the art to it? Also, where do you apply the whole brain? And the list can go on forever. You apply it in decision making. Because sometimes without we realizing it, we only make L1 decisions. Instead of making people decisions sometimes. We do clinical kind of decisions, you see. To make sure that we are using our brain right through and not making only from one angle our decisions, that we have the whole brain. Communication, of course. I mean, that's the whole thing is that, again, here you can't do without that because you are also in the communication business. Strategizing, discipline, team building. We get so many requests from, yesterday again, a big organization, they want us to do a number of sessions on team building, the brain and team building. Not the brain and climbing trees and jumping in rivers for team building, but understanding the brain as the point of departure. That how do you build a team if you've got 7 L1s and you've got 5 R2s? How do you understand that, closeness of team building, using the brain in team building too. Relationship building and so on and so on. Execution, making things work, and of course in leadership and management. To start understanding that everywhere. This is like L1 University. Why? Why is it left brain, L1? But now, look, this room is different. I mean, this room is a little bit different. It's different. Often when I'm asked, and I know a couple of, or maybe once or twice a year, to talk to at a university when it looks like this, when you've got this big sort of thing here. And I stand, I can't resist to tell them, sitting like this. I said to them, I wrote a TV series on the history of education, going back hundreds of years. You look exactly like people looked in the 14th century, exactly like. People sat like this, and there was a priest standing here, and who taught them. And there were 3 people sleeping in the back. I showed them a picture, an old picture of it, like exactly as this. And I said to them, the reason why it was built like this and created like this, because people believed that there is only one person with knowledge, and that's the person standing in front. That is, all classrooms were designed like that. I talk, you just listen. You can't kind of do this. Exactly the same. Now, sometimes I say to me, gee, but there's no other way to get people together like this. Maybe we haven't thought of another way. And that's why maybe there isn't another way. We haven't thought of another way. You see. Very sort of left brain, gives you no opportunity to move, Look at that. Jeez. I know you don't. Oh, my goodness me. Oh. Okay. Look at that. You see, this is what I'm talking about here. Do you have it here in this university? Of course. You have it everywhere. You have it everywhere. You have it at Oxford. You have it everywhere. More so even in places like Oxford. This arrangement of, it's like this kind of thing. Jeez. A little bit different, like more like you are. This is more a little bit of a left brain, but there's a little bit of room of the right brain dialogue, and gives you a chance, like here. You can talk to one another here. It's not like do. So there's a little bit of a mix. You see, there's a school classroom, where you can see this is like sitting together like this, acting, talking, whatever, sort of built around people interaction. This teaching is built around. Okay. This, in a sense, too, this sort of like a free movement of people, and I think one needs to rethink that environment where you operate, or your lecturers operate most of the time. Rethink it. Because the environment itself also can be classified, not only the person, but an environment often. You know that. I mean, it can be classified as that too is more relaxed, sort of more an R2 kind of environment kind of thing. I guess. So by showing you this, I actually trying to get across that really everything can be sort of come from there. You can sort of understand everything by just looking at your life. Where does it fit into the brain? It's interesting. Let me give you a bit of Elias's brain, that you can kind of have an idea. I said I would show you his cricket brain. Cricket brain, because we have sports instruments. So in his case, it was when he plays cricket, and you write the number 1 and 2 in the world, like he is now, and of course, to be number 1 and 2 in the world, it also has plenty of money involved in that. When they want to buy him, they're willing to even pay billions for that. Okay, so his brain looks sort of like this, his cricket brain. Very, very strong R2. Pretty much a people's person. So when he plays cricket too, the way that he inspires, he's a people's person. You can see that too, the way he hugs and pats people on the skull, the way he plays. But a person who's there, it also means that he needs to have good, strong energy and inspiration to play. If that drops, everything drops. So inspiration and energy is critical to him. If there anything that happened to him where this drops, everything will drop. Both these R1 and L1 and L2 are very solid. L2 is there because he's a relentless, committed person. He practices on and on to get his skills perfect. But over here, his R1, that is from where he creates and plays his free game. He would tell to you, when he bats, for instance, he doesn't think what shot I'm going to play. When the ball comes to him, he creates on his feet. That is a true sign of a creative, of a white space person. He creates as the ball is coming to him, he creates new shots. You see, he doesn't think beforehand. Totally unorthodox. And that's why they are now able to score in 20 overs, 240 runs. It just boggles the mind. It sounds like if it's not possible even, but they get it right. So this is his free-flowing, and he wants to spend as a cricketer most of his time there. But now you see his L1 is very low. And this is his focus brain. And the moment he doesn't get runs, he doesn't score, is because he hates to stay here. He wants to go there and go crazy immediately. Instead of spending time to focus. And the moment he does badly is because he hasn't spent enough time focusing and getting patient, and that's is sort of the one weak spot that he has got. That is the one weak spot. Okay, let me rush. I must finish now in a couple of minutes. Let me show you, this is a model that you've seen in different sorts and different ways. The model, I actually want to focus on one of these categories. Starts off by saying, like you do know, that at any given moment we are in a space called unconscious incompetence, when we don't know that we don't know. Many of your students, when they come here, even your professors and lecturers, when they come here, they are there. They don't know that they don't know. When we introduce the whole brain to people, often they just didn't have a clue. They didn't have a clue, like yesterday I had that experience. So they didn't have a clue. And so many people die there. They even die with a smile on their face. They just never knew. They never knew. Or you introduce creativity to people and they just never knew. So what needs to happen now, this is important again, because there's this thing for leadership. From there to conscious competence, you need to create awareness in people. You just make them aware of this. You talk about it like I'm talking now. This is awareness. So you talk about the incredible importance of understanding your whole brain and creativity, and without that you've got no hope in a sense. So you create awareness. You talk about it, you ongoing kind of thing. You write about it or whatever. Till you get to, you want people to get to conscious incompetence. You want them to get them to where they now know they don't know. Because that is an acknowledgement, and a very important one. Because as when it came to creativity, I had to go to all the, so I know it's how it works. So that you now know that you don't know. But you're not smiling anymore now. Because you know there's a gap, there's a big gap now. I look around at people who've actually got that, and they do things that I can't do. And now I ask her and say, what next? You see, and this is where the university has got a role to play now. You as leaders, you've got to create awareness. But from there to there, that is where training and development comes in. Now you train them to understand the brain. You sort of show them, and the skills are trained and developed and whatever, till they get to conscious competence, where they now do things in a consciously way, in a way that they've never done before. How does that work? Well, I'll tell you how it works. The mathematics teachers, what did they do the first month or two? They worked out a lesson. How do they teach L1, L2 in 40 minutes? You work it out. As consciously you do it. You talk to an audience like this, and you got your little notes, 4 quadrants, and you kind of know it consciously how you need to move between these quadrants. You do it consciously. But it's unbelievable because you're doing it differently now. I always use the example of driving a car. All those, you sort of eventually were trained to drive a car, and now you drive it consciously. You look at your hands and feet. You remember when you started driving a car? That sort of uncertainty. That's how it works. Everything works that way. You do it consciously. In the case of A.B. de Villiers again, he was taught to say, catch a ball eventually, and now he catches the ball. Incredibly different. He stands, he knows how to hold his hands, catches. But you see, leadership specifically cannot stay there. You can't. And A.B. de Villiers doesn't catch a ball like this anymore. He just puts out his hand and he catches it. He does it because he's reached the incredible level of unconscious competence, the state of flow. Psychologists call the state of flow. In American sport, they call it the zone. You've heard of that. You're in the zone. You want to be able to be involved in creativity from the zone, from the flow. And on the whole brain, you don't want to kind of think about it all the time. It has to come automatically. That you don't even know where your own dominance is anymore. It's automatic, it's flow. Because you see, my friends, there's a big, big difference between, for instance, doing creativity and being creative. Let me say it slowly. There's a big difference eventually than doing creativity and just being creative when it's just natural. Or doing the whole brain and being whole brain. It's a big difference. And you see that truly beyond the people who attract people, they do it from that level, where there's a spontaneous attraction. Those are the best teachers, the best managers and leaders. When they're in that state of flow, that's from there where they attract people. Please make this a kind of commitment and ask yourself, how can you, if you, maybe you are there. For those who feel they're just not there yet, how do I do this? You change lives when you're there. Massive impact when you're there. And again, it's sad. I said it earlier too. And so often we spend so much time on really stuff that matters so little, instead of the human beingness that matters completely. And then the last one that you know so well. Let me end off with that. Eventually, after everything is said and done, the whole brain leader needs to be anchored above that line. You must do everything in your power to not move below that line, although it is so difficult. Just to those who don't know this model, very briefly then. Many years ago, 12 of us were invited to Austin in Texas. We were all in the, let's call it the sciences of the human being. We were invited there to spend 2 weeks and to share our experiences with people, with stuff that we used and methodologies and that we used with people that worked and those that did not work. Put everything on the table. A brutal, honest. And from that we started to develop what we believed models that would work everywhere. And this model then was one of those models that we created. And I think after all these years, it's still the model which probably has the most impact on people. What does this model then say? It says very briefly that the essence of the human being, essence again, is your thinking. Your thinking. The thinking that you chose this morning when you woke up, in a sense, determines your moods for the day. That's how it works. Secondly, the understanding that no one can do it for you. No one can think on your behalf. You can't go to the bathroom and then ask your colleague to think on your behalf. No one can do that. And my friends, if you don't understand that, you don't understand freedom and liberation. Freedom and liberation means I don't blame anyone else for my thinking, because I can think what I want to think. And that's why the person next to me is in the same circumstances as I am, but we think differently about it. That's what human beings are all about. You can't blame anyone for the thinking you choose. And because thinking is the essence, it is immensely powerful. So what does thinking then do to you, can do to you? Below the line, it can make you a tormented person. It can make this university a tormented university. When you start choosing a kind of thinking where you curse, where you blame, all that sort of stuff, you keep on choosing that. And one morning you wake up, and you wake up angry. Nothing has happened, but you wake up angry, and you go through the day angry. So what has happened to you? You have become an angry human being. And then you start to take victims with you. You take victims with you. Could be the students in your class. Could be your colleagues. Could be your family members. You start to take victims. For them it may not be anger. The level may not be anger. It could be fear and anxiety for them. It could be anxiety and fear. That is an incredibly dangerous level that I have seen happening again throughout the world in organizations. You cannot allow any leader and any person in a leadership position to be there, because then you are destroying whatever you in your whole environment, your culture and everything else. Secondly, paralysis. Your thinking that you choose can take all your energy out of you. It can paralyze you. And that happens, and this, unfortunately, our latest research shows in South Africa that has escalated right up there now. Because the way it happens, in your thinking, you start to convince yourself there is no future for you. There's nothing out there for you anymore. And we see it amongst younger people more and more, and we've never, in a way that we've never seen it before. You convince yourself there is no future left, so you go through the motions, but there's no energy, no nothing, because there's no pulling power anymore. Again, an extremely dangerous position to be in. The third one, negativity, maybe of all of them, it's the most destructive of all, because negativity spreads like a disease very, very quickly, because it enters the way that you talk and you share things. You have a coffee break and you start moaning. There are 10 of these manifestations for you. You start moaning. So your colleague says, yeah. So your colleague becomes a moaning supporter. And in 2 weeks, everyone is moaning, so it spreads. And then what I said right at the beginning, now you've become a problem organization, because everything is like a problem and there is no creativity and no solution. You've actually thought yourself into that situation. A number of years ago, I created those 29-day diaries where you get rid of negativity. And many of these international teams have actually used it when they go on tour. And we worked with 600 women in the cosmetic industry. They were the first group that went through it. Because they had no energy, nothing. The sales went down, everything. So they went through 29 days, a little diary where they filled in every day, can I get rid of this nonsense? And then we monitored them for 3 months. And their profits went up immediately by 57%. Because negativity takes all your energy, takes your zest away from you. So don't allow it to dominate you. It's so easy to dominate. Negativity, it's easy. Without you noticing, you are talking that language. Very, very, very dangerous. And then the last level that we also confuse often is the stress level. Now I know at universities there is massive stress at the moment. That I know. But remember, 96% of stress, people who suffer from stress, that kind of stress cannot be cured by medication. Very small percentage. 96% of people who suffer from stress suffer because of their own distorted thinking. You choose a kind of thinking, and you could have chosen something else, but you choose a kind of thinking that causes your stress. What we've done in our sort of research, we've identified about 10 of these distortions that people suffer from. And once you can identify that particular distortion, then you can be cured and you can be healed, but not before then. Let me give you, I like always to use this one because it stands out after all these years, it just stands out. The one distortion that most people suffer from is a distortion called exaggerated thinking. When you, in your thinking, make things that happen to you more important than what they are. It can be little things. For instance, you walk out of here and one of your colleagues says a nasty word to you, insults you or something. Within the big universe of things, that's nothing. Nothing. What do? You make it important. You still keep it with you this afternoon, and it's tonight, it's still there somewhere. Tomorrow something small happens, you do the same thing. A small little thing, and you make it bigger. Instead of keeping it small and dealing with it. Now this is true for these little things that happen to you every day, but it's also true for big things. Losing a job, in sport, losing a match, or something like that, and you make it everything. And that exaggerated thinking is the biggest killer and the biggest sort of cause of stress than anything else. Some of you have heard that, but the best example that I've ever heard was when I gave a talk only on this model, the whole morning on this. A woman came to me afterwards, very, very sort of happy and smiling. She said to me, you know, this afternoon, or this morning, for the first time in 4 months, I'm completely free. I feel liberated. I feel happy, she said, because for 4 months I've been below that line. And I was completely stressed out and angry. She said 4 months ago I was supposed to marry a man, and just before the wedding He left me, and what I realize now, what I have done, I have kept him there. No one else kept him up here. I kept him up here. In my thinking, I kept him up there. She said, but this morning, he's not there anymore. I let him out. I understand that now. And then she said these words, which I've never forgotten. She said to me, you know what I've done? I confused a moment in my life with life. And this is what we do. We all have the moments. But is that confusing it with life that destroys us? So it doesn't matter what you are, what degrees and qualifications, whatever you've got. If your life is below the line, not a good life. I kind of believe that the first step is to anchor yourself above that. And anything to anchor yourself, that creative perspective to me is the first step. Like when I said when this remote started to give problems, that you realize I've got two choices here. When you come home tonight and something happens, you normally get angry, you stop, you say, hey, bad choice, below the line. From now on, you know these choices are all below and the more you choose below, the more you become it. And it's more difficult to escape, but the more you start making it above the line. And it is difficult, it's like driving and 4 taxis cut you off before you get to your destination. From now on, you must say thank you to the taxis. At least for the next month. Say thank you to the taxis, because they give you the opportunity now to create irritation, anger, or to do something else. Things happen with us every day where we can choose below or above. And the more we choose above, it'll be difficult, of course, very difficult. In the beginning it's difficult, but later on, it's like driving that car. Later on you just drive the car, you know when it happened, then you get to another you see, it's that every day you drove it kind of thing, the same here. You don't exactly know when it happens, when the new default kicks in. But when it kicks in, it's just a different life. It's free. It's true liberation when that kicks in. Just imagine if this university can truly at some stage call itself an above-the-line university. You know, in the schools, what we have in our 13 of the poorest of poor schools, there's even a far in the Eastern Cape, a school for the blind. They have this in front of the classroom. And every teacher in every class takes the first 10 minutes of every day to talk and anchor the children above the line. And they say this is more important than anything else. This is a slow process eventually of anchoring the school above the line. We've seen it in the mines where we've often worked in the past. The families who live in the mine, when you visit them and you open the front door, boom, we are an above the line family. People use this in meetings. When you've got people wanting to go below the line, in a nice caring way, oh man, our discussions are above the line kind of thing. You create a culture here, you see. Create a culture here. Let me end. Let me end with I've got hundreds of favorite stories. I've got the most beautiful, experiences with Paul Torrance, who was Mr. Creativity of the 20th. So many amazing experiences I've had with him. But then also other people that I've met along the way and experiences and so on. But maybe the one that I always come back to, and some of you heard it before, is Daniel Goleman. He was the creator, the modern creator of emotional intelligence. He told us a story one day. Actually, the whole angle was that sometimes people come into our lives for a short period, and we are not open enough to realize that something has just happened here. It's like being served, by a waiter or somewhere in the show, and something happened here that can really enrich your life and influence you for a lifetime. But we're not always acutely sensitive for those things that happen. So he told us of one of those experiences that he had. So I said, you may know the story. He was a professor at the University of New York for some time, and he had a routine that every morning at 7 o'clock, he stood at the bus stop waiting for his bus to take him to the university. And that particular morning, when he got onto the bus, he looked up and he saw a bus driver that he had never seen before on the route. And as he was walking up the steps, the bus driver put out his hand and greeted him. Said to him, "Good morning, sir. Welcome on my bus. Have a nice ride." Only those words. Daniel Goleman says, it's never happened before, and he feels different, you know. And then he sits down, and he watches the bus driver greet every passenger in different ways now. And then in his mind, he sort of says to himself, you know, it's the same route to the university, but it's a totally different journey. Same route, totally different journey. And as the bus stopped at the university, half an hour later or so, he was getting off, something happened. Bus driver put out his hand. Said to him, "Thank you, sir, for being a passenger on my bus today. Hope I see you soon again. Have a wonderful day." Just those words. Daniel Goleman says he gets off the bus and he stands on the sidewalk, and he for a minute or two he said he can't move. He just stands there because he realized that in that short journey his life changed forever. Because a question popped into his mind. And when he told us the story, that same question came into my mind. And that question is this: what kind of bus driver am I? When people leave my room, my office, my building, my lecture room, and they stand outside, what do they say about me as the bus driver? Because you see, in some way, we're all bus drivers. And if someone there, somewhere unknown, in the middle of New York, can have so much impact on the lives of people, how can we ever say that we cannot? Especially you, especially you. So if there's one thing that I have learned over many, many years is this, and people in your business, your organization, is that you must never, ever underestimate your influence on the lives of other people. Never underestimate your influence on the lives of other people. Thank you. Blessings to you. Thank you very much.